Have you ever asked yourself why the same kinds of people keep showing up in your life over and over again? The ones who look down on you. The ones who only come to you when they need something. The toxic ones, not necessarily because they're evil, but because they slowly drain you, little by little. And the strange thing is, you don't actually do anything to make them stay. But they stay anyway. As if there's an invisible thread tying you to relationships that you know, deep down, are no longer right for you. I've heard so many patients say the same sentence to me. Doctor, why do toxic people keep clinging to me? Or an even more painful one. Am I doing something wrong? Why does everyone treat me like this? And I want to tell you something maybe no one has ever said to you before. The problem isn't that you are wrong. The problem is that, without realizing it, you're leaving certain doors open. The doors that toxic people can spot from a distance. The doors you think are polite, kind, soft, understanding. But in reality, those are the doors that let them come in deeper, root themselves further, and stay longer. You don't have to chase them away. You don't have to shout. You don't need to fight. You just need to close the right doors, and they will leave on their own. And that's why this video exists. Today, I want you to join me in exploring 8 very quiet behaviors, small habits you don't even notice, that are keeping toxic people attached to your life. But more importantly, I want to show you how to change them, in the spirit of Stoicism. Calm, simple, no drama, but incredibly powerful. Because you deserve a lighter life. A more peaceful heart. A calmer mind. And relationships that nourish you, instead of draining you. If you're ready, let's begin. You know, sometimes, toxic people don't show up in our lives because they're so smart or so manipulative. They stay, simply because we give them something we don't realize we're giving: unconditional generosity. I want you to pause for a moment and imagine this. Think of someone you've treated very well. You gave them your time, your attention, your advice, your energy, even your own peace. You did it all because you thought, I'm a good person. I don't want anyone to be upset. But then you realize, the more you give, the more they demand. The more you try to help, the more exhausted you become. And painfully, they're not even grateful. In fact, they treat it like an automatic right. I once had a patient. Let's call her Anna to make it easier to picture. Anna came to my office utterly exhausted, dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep. She said, Doctor, I don't understand why people keep taking advantage of my kindness. Whenever someone asks me for something, I say yes. I'm afraid they'll be upset. I'm afraid they'll think I'm cold. Have you ever felt that way? That you have to use your kindness to keep the peace for everyone, except yourself? As I listened to Anna, I asked her a question. Have you ever asked yourself, are you helping them out of love, or out of fear of being left behind? She was silent for a long time, and then she burst into tears. That's the truth. A lot of people give far too much, not because they're incredibly noble, but because deep down, they're afraid of being rejected, afraid of being seen as the bad person, afraid of hurting others. But Stoicism teaches us something very different. Kindness does not mean sacrificing yourself. Kindness must be paired with wisdom. Epictetus once said, you cannot help anyone if you are drowning. You can't pull someone to shore if you're gasping for air yourself. And yet so many of us keep swimming, keep pulling, keep trying, until we have no strength left just to live. Do you know what toxic people think when they meet someone like that? They think, oh, here's a free energy source. Not because they're smarter than you, but because you don't set limits. Unlimited kindness doesn't make you noble. It makes you an endless resource for others to exploit. I want you to remember the last time you felt completely drained from trying to help someone. That moment when you finished sending a long comforting message, then sighed because you felt more tired than the person with the problem. Or that night you stayed up until 1 to 2 a.m. listening to someone vent, even though you had your own life to deal with the next morning. I'm not telling you not to help. But I want you to understand this. Loving others does not mean abandoning yourself. In modern psychology, there's a phenomenon called people-pleasing behavior, the urge to make everyone happy. People like this often grow up believing their self-worth depends on how much they can do for others. But what they don't realize is, the more they try to please everyone, the more they attract people who only come to take and never to give. Stoicism taught me, and I teach my patients, a simple but difficult principle. Only give when you have enough energy. Only help when it doesn't destroy your inner peace. And most importantly, learn to say no without explaining. That's not selfishness. That's maturity. I remember Anna asked me, "But if I say no, what if they feel hurt?" I replied, "If someone only loves you when you give them everything, that is not someone you need to keep." Do you see? When you set boundaries, people who truly respect you will understand. Selfish people will leave. And that is a blessing. I want you to try a small exercise. Next time someone asks you for something that's beyond your capacity, take a deep breath and say, "I'm sorry, I can't do that today." That's it. No, because? No, but? No explanations. At first, you'll feel shaky, you'll feel guilty. But then you'll feel something very strange. Relief. The feeling that you've just saved yourself from a very familiar spiral. And something magical will happen. Toxic people will show their true colors. Those who truly love you will respect your boundaries. And you, for the first time, will feel like you're living your life, not someone else's. When you learn to protect your energy, you don't lose your kindness. You're just turning your kindness into something valuable, not a free resource. And that's the first step to making toxic people disappear from your life, naturally. Gently, without fighting, without drama, just by returning to yourself. I want you to be completely honest with yourself for a moment. When someone throws a harsh sentence at you, a sarcastic remark, a criticism, or a disrespectful comment, what do you usually do? Do you stay quiet and observe? Or does your heart start racing, your face heat up, and your mouth automatically starts explaining, defending, or arguing, before you even have time to think? If your answer is the second one, you're not alone. Many of us were programmed from childhood like this. When someone says something, you must respond, must defend yourself, must speak up immediately, as if you don't react, you've lost. But what's the truth? Those quick, intense reactions actually become the remote control for your emotions, placed right in someone else's hands. I remember one of my patients. Let's call him David. David told me, "Doctor, every time my wife says something like, 'You never do anything right,' I lose it. I have to argue. I have to prove myself. I have to list out all the times I helped. I know I'm overreacting, but I can't stop." What he didn't realize was, every time he reacted like that, he was sending a clear message. As long as you hit the right spot, I will lose control. Toxic people, or simply people who haven't healed, are extremely sensitive to signals like that. They realize, I just have to push the right button, and this person will explode. And so they keep pushing. Stoicism doesn't teach us to become cold or unfeeling. It teaches us to choose our response, instead of being dragged along by our reflexes. Epictetus said, "It's not events that disturb us, but the way we interpret and respond to them." When someone throws a hurtful comment in your face, that sentence is like a small spark. Reacting too quickly, getting angry, crying, over-talking, is basically pouring gasoline on it. When in reality, you could let it die out if you don't rush to fan the flame. I want you to imagine a very realistic situation. You're at work, in a meeting, a coworker suddenly says, "If there's a mistake here, it's probably your fault, you must not have read it carefully." All eyes turn to you. The old version of you would do what? Your heart pounding, face flushed, quickly jumping in. No, that's not what happened, because, and then you keep talking, trying to justify yourself, defend yourself, prove you're not wrong. Sounds familiar? Now I want you to imagine a different version. Still you, still the same comment, but this time, you choose to pause. You take a deep breath. You silently count. 1, 2, 3. You allow a few seconds of silence to pass. Then you simply say, "All right, I'll double-check it later." No explanations. No self-condemnation. No overreaction. Do you feel the difference? In psychology, we know the brain has a kind of golden gap between stimulus and response. If we use that gap, just a few seconds, we take back control. Those short seconds are where Stoicism lives. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and also a Stoic practitioner, once wrote, You always have the power to choose your attitude in any situation. No one can touch your mind unless you hand it to them. When you react instantly, that's exactly what you're doing. You're saying, "Here, take the remote control to my emotions. Press whatever button you like." On the other hand, when you pause, when you take that brief moment, you're taking the remote back. I once gave David a very simple exercise, but it completely changed his relationship. I told him, "Next time your wife says something that hits your ego, you're not allowed to argue. You're only allowed to stay quiet for 3 seconds and then answer with a maximum of 5 words." He laughed at first. "No way, I'm too hot-headed for that," he said. But the next time his wife said, "You're absolutely useless," he was about to snap back. Then he remembered the exercise. He took a deep breath, counted 1, 2, 3, and simply said, "I hear what you're saying." No harsh tone, no sarcasm, no mockery, just a neutral sentence. And something interesting happened. Their usual script, arguing, raising voices, digging up old stories, never unfolded. His wife looked at him, a bit surprised. Then, she had nothing else to say. The conversation died down. In the following weeks, he kept using that 3-second wall with many people, his boss, colleagues, family. He told me, "I realized that a lot of the time, people say those things just to see how I react. When I stopped reacting, they got bored." And that, right there, is the key point. Toxic people live off your reactions. They want drama. They want to see you lose control. They want you to explain, to hurt, to spin out. When you stop giving them that, they lose their food source. And like any creature that loses its food, they leave. I'm not saying you must be silent forever. I'm not asking you to tolerate injustice. I want you to understand this: one calm, deliberate response is always more powerful than 10 impulsive ones. Next time someone says something that makes your chest tighten and bruises your ego, try these 3 steps. Take a deep breath. Count 1, 2, 3 in your head. Respond with a short, neutral sentence, no explanation. It could be, "Okay, I'll review it. Thanks, I'll note that." If that's what you think, you'll notice something very interesting. Your power doesn't lie in how fast you react, but in how little you need to react. Stoicism doesn't turn you into stone. It helps you become someone who can't be puppeteered so easily. And when you learn the art of not reacting immediately, you'll see, those who only show up to create drama, to poke, to control your emotions, will slowly disappear, while the people who value your calm and steadiness will stay. And that is your reward for every time you patiently count 1, 2, 3. I want you to think back to the most recent time someone disrespected you. Maybe they cut you off while you were trying to finish an important thought. Maybe they made a joke at your expense and you were the only one laughing, just to hide how hurt you felt. Or maybe they canceled on you 5 minutes before meeting, again, and you still said, "It's okay, I'm fine." Do you notice something? Every time you say, "It's okay," when it isn't okay, you're sending a silent message. Go ahead and keep doing this. I'll tolerate it. One of my patients, let's call her Melissa, once told me, "I don't want to create drama. I'm afraid people will think I'm difficult or too sensitive. So I just let it slide, and now I don't even know who I am anymore." Melissa is the kind of person society loves to praise: kind, reasonable, easygoing. But what she had to sacrifice was her identity, her self-respect, and her peace. I asked her a question I want you to ask yourself right now. Are you letting things slide because you're forgiving, or because you're afraid of losing people? She went quiet, and many of us would fall silent too. Stoicism teaches us that respect isn't something we demand with words. Respect is the natural result of staying true to our principles and not bending below our own standards just to please others. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You deserve peace, and if someone takes that away from you, that is not someone you should keep close." But we've forgotten this. We accept words that hurt us because we think silence is maturity. We try to act grown up by enduring. But in reality, endurance isn't maturity, it's abandoning yourself. Melissa once told me that her close friend constantly made jokes like, "Oh my God, you talk so long I'm exhausted. No one invited you and you still showed up, huh?" Everyone laughed. Melissa laughed too. But that night, She cried alone. I asked her. After those jokes, what change? She hesitated and said, nothing change. And that's the problem. If there are no consequences, people don't change. If there are no consequences, they never realize they crossed a line. If there are no consequences, disrespect becomes a habit. If every time you get hurt, the relationship continues exactly as before, the other person's brain learns a very simple equation. Bad behavior plus no loss equals permission to continue. But listen carefully. What you need to do is not explode, not fight, not teach them a lesson. That's not Stoicism. Stoicism isn't about blowing up. Stoicism is about adjusting people's access to you, gently, but consistently. Next time someone disrespects you, you don't need a long, heavy, we need to talk speech. You don't have to open with, we need to talk. People get defensive the moment they hear that. You just quietly pull back. You answer more slowly. You become naturally less available. You share less about your life. You start using neutral phrases like, I'll have to check my schedule. I'm not available today. I'll think about it. And then you watch their reaction. In psychology, there's a concept called behavioral consequence. People adjust their attitude when their behavior results in a loss. Loss of access. Loss of privilege. Loss of comfort. And the amazing thing is, people who genuinely respect you will adjust as soon as they realize they've hurt you. They'll say, did I do something that upset you? I'm sorry, I was out of line that day. But toxic people? They'll get angry, accuse you of being distant, act like the victim, or try to guilt trip you back into your old behavior. That's their way of saying, go back to your old version, so I can control you more easily. And that's the most valuable information you can get. One day, Melissa told me she decided to take a step back from the friend who always made hurtful jokes. She didn't confront her. She just became less proactive, less open. Still polite, still kind, but no longer wide open with her energy every day. And things changed very quickly. Her friend texted, why have you been so distant lately? Did I do something wrong? See that? When you change the consequences, people change their behavior. Some will understand. Some will improve. Some will leave. And those who leave are gifts life is giving you. I want you to remember this as a rule of self-respect. You don't need to punish anyone. You just need to stop rewarding them with your presence. Stoicism doesn't teach you to build walls to hide your feelings. Stoicism teaches you to build fences to protect your peace. And when you learn to quietly reduce access, without drama, without resentment, the people who only show up to drain your energy will naturally drift out of your orbit. Not because you pushed them away, but because they cannot survive in an environment where respect is a basic requirement. Have you ever been in this situation? You're hurt, but you stay silent. You're sad, but you don't say anything. You're tired, but you force a smile. You expect the other person to just know. You hope they'll notice your sad eyes, your softer voice, your disappointment hidden in a whatever you want answer. But they don't notice. Not only do they not understand, they repeat the same behavior that hurt you. And you go quiet again. Then disappointed. Then resentful and in pain. I've heard hundreds of patients sigh and tell me, I thought they would understand, but they didn't. And I always reply with something I want to say to you right now. Not everyone sees the world through your eyes. I had a patient, let's call her Laura. Laura was incredibly sensitive and perceptive. She could sense when someone was sad. If someone was tired, she'd give them space. If someone seemed off, she'd gently check in. Laura had a beautiful heart, and that beautiful heart made her suffer more than necessary. She said, I don't want to ask for anything. I just want them to feel me. But feeling you is something very few people can do. Not because they don't care, but because they don't share your emotional language. Laura wanted subtlety, but her partner was blunt and straightforward. She wanted people to read her, but her parents came from a generation that believed silence was strength. She wanted coworkers to sense her mood, but they were used to direct, casual communication. What she considered sensitive, they found hard to read. What she saw as signals, they saw as nothing. In the end, She felt invisible in the very relationships she'd invested her whole heart in. Stoicism teaches us, we don't suffer because people treat us badly. We suffer because we expect them to behave the way we want. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, do not expect the world to change just to match your feelings. Adjust your expectations to fit human nature. It sounds cold, but it's actually incredibly freeing. People cannot read each other's minds. No one is required to know what you're thinking unless you tell them. Silence is not a universal language. It's the language of people who are afraid of being hurt. I asked Laura, when you stay silent, what do you want to happen? She answered, I want them to realize it on their own. And I told her, it's not that they don't realize. It's that they don't know what they're supposed to realize. Silence is not communication. Silence is handing over your power, allowing others to guess, assume, and imagine your feelings, and most of the time, they guess wrong. Toxic people especially love those who wait for others to just understand. Why? Because your silence gives them two things. No responsibility. No need to change. You don't say you're sad. You don't say you're hurt. You don't say they were wrong. So they assume, oh, this must be okay. In behavioral psychology, there's a principle. Behavior that receives no feedback equals behavior that gets reinforced. If they tease you once and you give a nervous laugh right pointing arrow, they'll tease you again. If they show up late 5 times and you still say, it's okay, right pointing arrow, they'll show up even later. If they're emotionally absent and you say nothing right pointing arrow, they'll keep being absent. Not because they're evil, but because no one adjusts behavior without clear information. Stoicism doesn't teach you to bottle things up. Stoicism teaches you to speak clearly, calmly, and at the right time. Imagine you're standing in front of someone you care about and you say, that comment really hurt my feelings. Or, when you cancel at the last minute, I feel disrespected. Or simply, I need you to listen to me a little more. Gently. No blaming. No yelling. Just the truth. If they love you, they will adjust. If they value you, they will care. If they're meant to be in your life, they will slowly learn. And if they get angry, mock you, dismiss your feelings, or refuse to change, that's also information. Information that you've invested too much expectation in the wrong person. I reminded Laura of something I also want you to remember. Speaking up is not starting a fight. Speaking up is not weakness. Speaking up is an act of self-love. You have the right to say, I don't like that. I don't feel okay with this. I want to be treated with more respect. Not to control others, but to free yourself from the slow-burning sadness of waiting for someone to just know, when they might never figure it out. Emotional maturity is not about becoming mysterious or bottling everything up. It's about having the courage to say what you were once afraid to say. And when you do that, you'll see, the people who truly value you will stay. The toxic ones, those who survive on your silence, will leave on their own. No anger needed. No dramatic showdown. Just you stepping out of the shadows of vague expectations and into the light of clarity. I want you to picture this scene. Someone asks you, why did you make that decision? And instantly, you feel like you have to explain. Not just a simple answer, but a 3-chapter explanation. You go into reasons, context, feelings, history, intentions, as if you're asking for approval, not simply sharing a choice. Have you ever done that? Have you ever felt that if you didn't explain enough, people would misunderstand you, judge you, or leave you? If your answer is yes, you're not alone. So many people carry a quiet fear of being misunderstood. And deeper than that, fear of not being accepted. And when you fear being misunderstood, you start talking too much. When you fear rejection, you try to prove that your decisions are reasonable. When you fear upsetting others, you start sharing things no one even asked about. What's the problem with that? When you over-explain, you unintentionally send the wrong message. I'm not sure my decision is valid. You have the right to judge it. And toxic people, or anyone who likes control, will grab that weakness like they've just found a button. I once had a male patient named Jeremy. Jeremy was a mid-level manager at a tech company. He was great at his job, but he had one big weakness: he couldn't stand the feeling that someone was disappointed in him. One day, His boss asked, "Why did you prioritize project A over project B?" All he needed to say was, "Because A was closer to its deadline." But he didn't. He talked for almost 10 minutes. Well, last week someone on the team was out, and client A kept emailing, and the timeline for B is longer. And that day we also had, on and on. By the end, his face was flushed. He told me, "I don't know why, I just felt like I had to defend myself, like if I didn't explain everything. He'd think I was incompetent." Unfortunately, that's not what his boss thought. His boss just saw, "Oh, this employee isn't very confident. Not very solid. See? Over-explaining makes you look weak, even when you're not." Stoicism teaches us something that sounds simple but is very hard to live by. You are responsible for your decisions, not for how others feel about them. Marcus Aurelius never wrote long defenses justifying his choices. He simply wrote, "I do what I believe is right. Those who understand, understand. Those who don't, that's not my problem." For a Stoic, inner clarity matters more than outer agreement. The problem with chronic over-explainers is this. They believe, if I explain enough, people will agree. But here's the truth. People who want to understand you will understand, even if you say little. People who don't want to understand won't, no matter how much you talk. You can't convince someone who's committed to misunderstanding you. You can't satisfy someone whose satisfaction is random and unstable. Toxic people especially love big explainers. Why? Because the more you explain, the clearer your fears become. You're afraid of rejection. You're afraid of judgment. You're afraid of disapproval. You're afraid of making someone upset. And they will use those fears to control you with phrases like, "I still don't get why you do that. That doesn't sound very reasonable. That's a bit selfish, don't you think?" So you explain even more. And more. And more. The more you talk, the more control they have. I always tell my patients, instead of long explanations, answer with steadiness. When someone asks, "Why did you make that choice?" you can say, "Because that's what feels right for me right now." If they ask, "But why?" you repeat, "Because that's my decision." No anger, no attitude, no challenge. Just a sentence that is clear, calm, and confident. You'll be surprised at what happens. Respectful people will say, "Ah, okay, I understand." Toxic people will get irritated, because they can't drag you into a long debate to reshape your choices anymore. They lose control, because you no longer need their approval. I remember after a few weeks of practicing, Jeremy told me a story. A coworker asked him, just like before, "Why didn't you submit the document in the format I sent you?" The old Jeremy would have gone on a long explanation. But this time, he simply said, "Because this format helps my team work faster." The coworker replied, "Well, I prefer the old format." And Jeremy said, "I understand, but I'm still choosing this one." That's it. Simple. Short. Unafraid. What happened? The coworker had nothing left to say. The conversation ended. No drama. No tension. No power struggle. Just one man who knows what he's doing, and doesn't ask for permission to do it. And I want you to remember this. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you protect your energy, your time, or your peace. Not everyone deserves to know your reasons. Not everyone needs to understand. Not everyone needs to be convinced. Let explanations be a gift, not a default. When you speak less but stand firmer, you'll notice. People who respect you will listen more. Toxic people will quietly leave. And your life becomes lighter, clearer, and more peaceful. Because in the end, as the Stoics say, peace begins the moment you stop asking for permission to live your own life. I want you to take a moment and look honestly at yourself. How many times in your life have you said, "Forget it, I'll just let it slide"? Not because you were truly okay, but because you were afraid of conflict? Afraid someone would get mad. Afraid of making things awkward. Afraid of being seen as difficult. So you stay quiet. You swallow it. You smile it away. You play the easygoing one, while inside, you're drying out, little by little. Have you ever been there? If you have, I want you to know this. In the eyes of toxic people, your fear of conflict is not kindness, it's a back door into your life. I remember a patient, let's call her Rachel. Rachel was incredibly kind, and that kindness made her endure things she never should have had to. Her husband often said things that hurt her. Like, "You're always too sensitive. Seriously, you complain so much over small things." Or softer, "I was just joking, don't make a big deal out of it." Every time, Rachel lowered her head, gave a weak smile, and told herself, "It's fine, don't make it worse." But at night, she couldn't sleep. Her chest felt heavy, her throat tight. She came to see me and said, "I'm so tired, doctor, I feel like I don't have a voice anymore." And that sentence has haunted me for years. I don't have a voice anymore. That's what happens when you avoid conflict for too long. You lose your voice. You lose your boundaries. You lose yourself. In psychology, we call this conflict avoidance. These people often grow up in environments where silence equals safety. Where as soon as you say, "I don't like that," the tension in the room skyrockets. So from a young age, they learn a distorted belief. To keep the peace, I must hold the pain. Stoicism sees this very differently. Stoics are not afraid of conflict. But they don't chase it either. They choose the middle path. Speak the truth, but speak it calmly. Protect your boundaries, but with compassion. Don't attack, but don't run away. If you believe avoiding conflict keeps you safe from pain, you're mistaken. The pain doesn't disappear. It just goes underground, festers, and later erupts as emotional burnout. Rachel once told me, "I keep quiet because I don't want to hurt his feelings." And I asked her, "What about your feelings? Who's taking care of your pain?" She went silent, and that silence said everything. What's truly scary isn't an argument. What's truly scary is giving up your right to speak. When you don't dare say, "No." When you don't dare say, "That hurt me." When you don't dare say, "I disagree." You're saying something else through your behavior. Go ahead, I'll take it. And toxic people will keep going. They'll push a little more. And a little more. Until one day, you realize there's nowhere left for you to step back to. You're already standing at the edge. Stoicism has a beautiful concept. Act, don't react. Acting here doesn't mean attacking. It means choosing to speak your boundary. I taught Rachel a very simple sentence. When you say that, I feel disrespected. And I told her, you only need to say this. No raised voice, no blaming, no debate, just the truth. At first, she was terrified. People who fear conflict often tremble just imagining saying the truth. But she tried. And to her surprise, something unexpected happened. Her husband went quiet. No arguing. No blaming. No mocking. Just silence. Because for the first time in 7 years of marriage, Rachel didn't let it slide. Things didn't become perfect overnight. But something crucial happened. Rachel found her voice again. And when she respected that voice, others began to respect it too. I want you to remember this. Avoiding conflict by staying silent doesn't create peace. It creates a calm before the storm. True peace, lasting peace, can only come when you're willing to speak the truth without shaking. No yelling. No sobbing. No screaming. No blaming. Just speaking the truth, from the deepest calm within you. You don't speak to win. You don't speak to humiliate anyone. You speak to protect the most genuine part of yourself, the part that will die quietly if you keep silencing it. If you avoid conflict, you're not a bad person. You're not weak. You were just taught the wrong thing. But now that you know, you can choose differently. Choose to say what you think. Choose to reset your boundaries. Choose to protect your heart from those who abuse your niceness. Choose to live as your true self, instead of living in fear of someone's anger. And something beautiful will happen. The people who only stayed because you stayed silent will leave. Those who can still love you when you tell the truth are the ones worthy of staying. Because as the Stoics say, there is no peace in unreasonable self-sacrifice. Real peace is found when you dare to live according to your values. I want you to be honest with yourself for a few seconds. Do you ever feel anxious when someone seems a bit distant? Have you ever tried to please someone you don't even like? Have you ever felt your heart sink just because someone said, "You've changed," or "You're kind of difficult now"? If so, you're not alone. Many of us grow up with a false belief. Being liked equals being worthy. Being disliked equals being wrong. Not good enough. Needing to change. But that's a trap. A trap that makes you incredibly easy to control. I once worked with a patient named Olivia. Olivia was the type of person everyone liked, warm, helpful, always pleasant. But in the therapy room, she was someone else. Tired, burnt out, and full of anxiety. She told me, "Doctor, I can't stand it when someone doesn't like me. The moment they seem cold, I panic. I try everything to win them back." Then she let out a long sigh. The kind of sigh I've heard from thousands of patients. "I'm exhausted." Here's the truth. The people who always try to please everyone are often the ones in the most pain. Stoicism teaches that your worth does not lie in someone else's hands. It lies in the choices you make every day. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You cannot control the applause of others, but you can control your own integrity." One of life's hardest lessons is accepting that not everyone will like you. And that's completely okay. Toxic people particularly love those who are afraid of being disliked. Why? Because all it takes is one sentence like, "Wow, you're acting weird lately." And you'll worry all day. One raised eyebrow, one sigh, one scene, with no reply. And you rush in to explain, to fix, to smooth things over. In their eyes, you're like an emotional switch they can flip at will. They know that just by withdrawing a little, or looking disappointed, they can make you shape your behavior to suit them. And that's how you lose yourself. You laugh at jokes that hurt you. You agree to things you don't want. You change your mind just to avoid conflict. You apologize even when it's not your fault. Each time you do that, a part of you dies a little. One time, Olivia told me that in her friend group, there was someone who often joked, "Oh, look at Olivia being too cool for us now," not replying right away. It sounded like a joke, but after hearing it, Olivia would spend the whole evening feeling guilty, texting back, explaining, blaming herself. I asked her, "Do you actually respect the person who said that?" She was quiet, then softly said, "Honestly, no." Then I asked, "Then why does their approval matter so much?" She burst into tears. See? Many of us are stuck right there. We chase the approval of people we don't even want to be like. It makes no sense, and yet it's incredibly common. Stoicism reminds us of a powerful truth. No one has the right to decide your worth based on their fleeting emotions. People can misunderstand you. They can dislike you. They can gossip about you. That's their story, not yours. You're not here to become a version of yourself that makes everyone comfortable. You're here to become the version you can respect when you look in the mirror. I taught Olivia a very simple exercise. Whenever you're worried someone doesn't like you, ask yourself 2 questions. 1. Do I respect this person? 2. Do I want to live like them? If the answer is no, then why does their opinion matter so much? This short exercise completely changed Olivia. She began to realize that someone's silence doesn't always mean they hate her. Someone's irritation isn't automatically her responsibility. Someone's disappointment is not a sentence passed on her life. She began to stand her ground. She started saying no without shaking. She realized that approval is no longer her primary source of oxygen. And something wonderful happened. Those who had been exploiting her niceness slowly disappeared, while those who truly cared started to become more visible. You were not born to make the whole world happy. You were born to live in alignment with your values. And as the Stoic philosophers say, the person who lives by principles need not fear the gaze of the crowd. I want you to try something today. Take a deep breath and quietly say to yourself, "I don't need everyone to like me. I just need to respect myself." When you truly believe that, a door will open. A door that leads to an inner freedom toxic people can never touch. I want you to take a few seconds to really listen to yourself. Not to the noise out there, but to the very small voice inside, the one you might be afraid to face. Are you afraid of being alone? I'm asking seriously. Have you ever felt uneasy when the room is too quiet? Turned the TV on just so the space wouldn't feel empty? Texted someone, not because you missed them, but because you were afraid of silence? Have you ever clung to a bad relationship just because? At least I still have someone. If you're nodding inside, I want you to know. You're not weak. You just haven't learned how to be alone in a healthy way yet. One of the biggest truths Stoicism has taught me, and that I've passed on to my patients, is this. People who are not comfortable being alone will cling to anyone who makes them feel less abandoned, even toxic people. I once worked with a patient named Ethan, a man who looked strong on the outside, but was full of cracks inside. Ethan said, "Doctor, I know this relationship is bad. I know she doesn't respect me. But I'm scared that if I let go, I'll have no one." I asked him, "What's scarier? Being in a bad relationship, or being alone?" He couldn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because his fear was too big. Fear of loneliness is deeply human. We are social creatures. We're wired to connect. But there's an important line. Healthy connection is chosen. Toxic connection is driven by fear. What people don't realize is that it's their fear of being alone that anchors them in toxic relationships. They accept tiny crumbs of affection. They endure disrespect. They shrink themselves just so the other person won't leave. They're always the one texting first, apologizing first, trying hardest, holding the connection together with their own sweat and anxiety. And the cruel part is, as long as you're terrified of being alone, you'll accept anyone. And when you accept anyone, toxic people will never leave. One day, I told Ethan something I also want to say to you. Loneliness begins to heal the moment you stop seeing it as punishment and start seeing it as opportunity. An opportunity to discover what you like. An opportunity to know who you are when no one's watching. An opportunity to spend your time on what truly matters to you. An opportunity to build an inner foundation so strong that no one can control you with fear again. When I asked Ethan to try spending one entire weekend with himself, no texts, no meetups, no hiding in work, he was terrified. But he tried. And at the next session, he told me, "Turns out, I don't hate being alone. I just hated that empty feeling I never dared to face." That's the key. We don't fear being alone because solitude is terrible. We fear it because in silence, we have to face feelings we've been running from for years. Old sadness. Feelings of not being enough. Unresolved loneliness. Empty spaces we've only ever filled with other people. But when you begin to face those things, you start to grow stronger. You learn how to soothe yourself. You learn how to fill your days with meaningful things, instead of temporary people. And then something magical happens, something I see again and again in my patients. When you're truly okay on your own, you stop chasing those who don't deserve you. You stop texting first. Stop trying to revive relationships that died a year ago. Stop being the one holding the rope. Stop being the free energy source for people who only take. You start living your life. You read. You learn new skills. You work out. You cook. You tidy your space. You go for walks. You listen to music you love. You sit in a cafe alone without feeling weird. You learn how to talk to yourself. And surprisingly, it feels good. Really good. When you're okay by yourself, life starts filtering people for you. Those who truly love you will notice your absence and reach out. Those who were only there because you held the conversation will vanish. Not because you pushed them away. Not because you blamed them. Not because you made a big scene. But because they have nothing left to cling to. You no longer need them to fill a void. When you're no longer afraid of being alone, you become very hard to manipulate. Your biggest fear is gone. You become free in the deepest sense. Stoicism calls this inner strength, a wholeness that no one can take from you. I want you to try something small that could change your life. Sometime this week, set aside at least one afternoon just for yourself. No phone. No reaching out. No waiting for replies. No doing things to prove anything to anyone. Just be with yourself, and see what happens. At first, you might feel uneasy. A little bored. A little empty. But in that emptiness, you'll start to hear a voice you've ignored for far too long. The voice of your true self. And when you find that voice again, toxic people will leave your life on their own, because they no longer have the key to your mind. Not because you pushed them out, but because you're no longer afraid of losing them. And when you're no longer afraid of losing them, you'll realize you've finally found yourself. If you've made it this far, I want you to give yourself some credit. Not for me. For you, for being brave enough to look at the darker corners inside yourself. The places most people never dare to touch. You've gone through 8 behaviors. Not to blame yourself, not to declare yourself broken, but to recognize something important. You have the right to decide who gets to enter your life, and who doesn't. You don't need to fight toxic people. You don't need to expose them. You don't need to shout or prove anything. You just need to come back inward, and gently adjust small habits, small reactions, small boundaries. And then you'll begin to see something miraculous. The people who only existed in your life because they fed off your softness will fade away. Quietly. Without bitterness. Without drama. They leave because the new version of you has no place for them anymore. And that is the most beautiful, natural kind of cleansing life can offer. You know, every time I talk to a patient who has reclaimed their boundaries, I see a certain light in their eyes, the light of freedom. I hope that light finds its way into your life too. Because Stoicism isn't about becoming iron or ice. It's about learning how to be soft without breaking, calm without surrendering, open-hearted when it's right, and closed when it needs to be. It's about knowing how to stand in the middle of life's storm, while still guarding the quietest place inside you. If today you only choose to change one small thing, just one, out of the 8 we talked about, trust me, your life will start to shift. The relationships that no longer fit will fall away. Kinder people will walk in. And slowly, you'll become a version of yourself that you are proud to look at in the mirror. Thank you for spending your time with this video. Thank you for allowing me to walk with you on this quiet but powerful journey of healing. If this video touched something inside you, leave a small comment. Who knows, your words might make someone else feel a little less alone on their journey. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, peace doesn't come from pleasing the world. Peace comes from becoming the strongest guardian of your own soul.